This is Quinshawn Junkins. You're listening to the Red and Blue Crew with David and Brett.
Welcome to the Red and Blue Crew podcast, the source for all Ole Miss sports news, rumors, and innuendo. Are you ready? From the inside the Rebels studios, let's get ready to rumble. Now here are your hosts, David Johnson and Brad Logan.
And welcome into the Red and Blue Crew podcast, the instant analysis, rapid reaction, whatever you want to call it. David Johnson is with me. And David, final score, the best news of the night, Ole Miss 28, Auburn 21. It wasn't without a little bit of drama late. Auburn kicked an onside kick, as we just saw. Dane Wade jumps right on top of it, and Ole Miss wins the game. We'll get into the minutia of this game, the way Ole Miss started hot and then finished hot. At the end of the day, David, 28-21, Ole Miss wins. What are your thoughts about the win tonight in Auburn?
Yeah, I'll take it. It's an SEC road win, Brad, and Auburn's a difficult place to go in and play. And we all know that. We know the Rebels' history there. So anytime you can leave there with a victory, I think you feel good about it. I wonder, and this may not be fair to say, but I'm wondering if the Ole Miss offense is clicking on all cylinders. Now, Auburn's got a good defense, but you know, when you look at the stats tonight, I mean, Jackson Dart didn't have a superstar night at all. Wide receivers, they were okay. Quinshawn Judkins ran the ball hard in the first half. I thought really well. But overall, 425 total yards of offense. But this game, and it's going to kind of sound funny, but I got to give to the defense. And, you know, before I give too much credit to Pete Golding and the Auburn defense, Brad, Auburn's offense is terrible. And I think we all saw that tonight. The bottom line is this is an Ole Miss victory. The Rebels moved to 6-1. They keep pace with Alabama in the West. We need Alabama to lose twice somewhere down the line because they own the tiebreaker head-to-head against us. If they lose once and say it's to LSU, then it's a three-way tie and all kind of different scenarios pop up as to who would represent the West. But it's a win. It's a win at Auburn. It's a win over Hugh Freeze. And, you know, I'm happy to point out now Ole Miss is 2-0 against Hugh Freeze in his afterlife beyond Ole Miss football. But, I mean, I'm taking the win, and I'm happy.
Ole Miss and its fan base, I think, number one, going into this week, did not, clench its fist when it has to do with playing against Hugh Freeze. And honestly, during the game, David, it kind of was not a thought at all. And at the end of the game, you really didn't feel that, well, Ole Miss beat Hugh Freeze. I don't know if it's because there's so much water has passed under the bridge since then, but I'm with you. It just didn't have a lot of drama to it. And maybe if Ole Miss loses the game, maybe there is more drama. But that kind of, if there ever was any Ole Miss versus Hugh Freeze, I mean, it's gone now. And Ole Miss doesn't even play Auburn next year. So, and like you said, Ole Miss is 2-0 against Hugh Freeze since he left. Let's get into the game in and of itself. I think from a coaching standpoint, from a fan standpoint, you can just flush this. And you can just say, you know what? Ole Miss is on this side of the column. That's got the W's. They're not on this side of the column. Those are the L's. That's the most important thing. But let's get into the game in and of itself. And you talked about the defense, and that's where I want to start. Auburn, 275. That's the total yards. And David, I think 75 of that came on, with the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. At one point, they had like 28 rushing yards. And
that's what
the defense played great.
Yeah, and you credit Pete Golding, you credit the Ole Miss defense. But Brad, I've watched a lot of football over the years. That Auburn offense is bad. and it's bad in a lot of spots. Jarquez Hunter isn't one of those bad spots, but pretty much everywhere else on that offense, they're in a tough spot. And I think Ole Miss should have dominated them, and in most of the game they did.
Here's what was interesting to me, David. The first half, whether it be holding fouls, whether it be a botched snap or hold on the field goal attempt, there were a number of plays. The interception, Jackson Dart underthrows. It gets tipped around. Zachary Franklin does. Auburn intercepts and goes the other way. So many things were going against Ole Miss in the first half. And this is where Lane Kiffin and this Ole Miss team, and really teams under his tutelage, are different than Ole Miss teams of the past. And you hear me say this all the time. I think I've even heard you say it. These are the type of games that Ole Miss loses. When they have all the pressure on them, going on the road, winning at a place you haven't won in 71 years, doing this, doing that, against a team that you don't play well on the road. And Lane Kiffin said in the press conference Monday that we all heard, we break records here. We change things here. And that's exactly what he did tonight. Right or wrong, good or bad, eye test, win or lose, on paper, Ole Miss wins the game. And Lane Kiffin has done something yet again that no other coach has done since you and I have been alive.
Yeah, first back-to-back victories over Auburn since the 1950s. It's been, as you alluded to, it's been over 70 years. And, Ole Miss can now win football games in different ways. And, it's felt for so long that if Ole Miss was going to win a football game, they were going to have to go out and outscore the opponent, and put 40 on the board or 50 on the board. You don't have to do that anymore. Your offense is still good. There's no doubt about it. But you can win a ball game by scoring 28 points on the road against an SEC foe with this defense and how it's playing now. And, I think everybody should be happy Ole Miss is winning football games in different ways. It doesn't have to be the 50 to 45 shootout. It still is sometimes, as we go back to the LSU win a couple of weeks ago, but it doesn't have to be that way anymore. I mean, you can play Auburn at Auburn and come out with a touchdown victory because your defense basically shut them down the entire game. And that last Auburn touchdown, that was just a mop-up drive. They dinked and dunked their way down the field, basically against a prevent defense, and got it in the end zone. But, even when the game was tied at the half, I didn't ever really feel like Ole Miss was in peril. I never did. And, when the offense needed to score, they scored the necessary points. And, it's time to move on to Vanderbilt. And then after Vanderbilt, you got two games that are going to really decide how the rest of the season plays out, with Texas A&M coming to Oxford, and then just a mammoth game potentially setting up at Georgia.
Let's look at those offensive numbers. You talked about Jackson Dart, and we'll talk about the offense just for a moment, and talking about how, maybe they were very sluggish in the first half. But it seemed like everything went against Ole Miss's way in the first half. And, David, I'm with you. At halftime, in Ole Miss and Auburn were tied at 14. I actually felt pretty good because as bad as Ole Miss played, they weren't trailing, and it was basically a 0-0 game. So Jackson Dart finishes 10 of 17 for 202 through the air, had the one interception we talked about, the pass to Zachary Franklin that was bobbled, tipped up in the air, and then Auburn intercepts, had the one touchdown pass. Running the ball, Quinshon Judkins, 21 carries, 124, one touchdown, had a long of 21. And the stat for me, David, 5.9 yards a carry. Big night for Quinshon Judkins. He ran the ball really well. I thought Ulysses Bentley had another solid game, David. Only 52 yards on the ground, 17 carries, averaged 3.1 on the ground. But Bentley, to me, ran really strong tonight. He got a little bit banged up in the first half, but he ran the ball well.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And even in the second half, he went down with what looked like an injury, but he hopped right back up. And he's a great compliment to Quinshon Judkins. There's no doubt about it. And Jackson Dart
Right.
runs for 44 yards, including the 29-yard touchdown run in the second quarter.
Had 2 touchdowns on the ground, too. I forgot about those.
2 on the ground. That's
Yeah.
right. I mean, so, while Dart only threw for 202 and 1-1, he was effective.
Very.
And that's what matters. And the same thing can be said for Trey Harris. I mean, 4 catches, 102 yards. I mean, but those were 4 big catches. Caden Priestcorn, you want to see him get more involved, but 2 big catches, 63 yards. He was only targeted twice. So, I'd like to see them start targeting Caden a little more. I think he could certainly be an effective option for Jackson Dart. And, I was proud of Zachary Franklin. He only had 2 catches for 15 yards, but one of them was for a touchdown and a big touchdown. So, Ole Miss survived this game, really, as you brought up earlier, without Jordan Wilkins being out there as a wide receiver. But, I want to say this, not to get off the offense, but Jordan Wilkins' backfielding punts was huge for Ole Miss. Absolutely huge that you had a guy back there, experienced as he is, fielding the ball.
Yeah, because if folks will remember, Dayton Wade was back there and fumbled the very first one, was able to get it back. But he did fumble. And, you're right. Watkins was back there again, and he didn't do anything but catch the football. Now, real quick, Jordan Watkins, ESPN reported during the game that he indeed had surgery. And I had not heard this, but Katie George pointed out a metal plate was inserted into Jordan Watkins' hand. So he actually has a metal plate in there. If that had been reported, I had not heard that anywhere than other when I heard it tonight. So he played, had a club-like device on his hand, and was catching punts. He is an absolute machine. An incredible football player. The radio network, I was listening to him, David, and they said that, they pointed out that he was basically the quarterback in the wide receiver room because Ole Miss had a couple of illegal formation penalties, and that was because Watkins was not on the field telling the receivers how to line up. He's a guy that just has so many intangibles, and not having him on the field was big tonight. Just one of the many reasons, many ways that Ole Miss overcame so many obstacles tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, Tyler Comas will come out with game balls a little bit later on this contest. I hope he gives Jordan Watkins a game ball because I would. I would definitely give
David, save your game balls for after the break. That's going to be our 5 game balls, and we're going to hold that till after the break. But, yeah, Jordan Watkins is getting one for me, even though he didn't get a catch. So hold those game balls. David, let's talk about defense for a moment. And, Pete Golding, you and I know quite well, Ron Roberts, the defensive coordinator for Auburn, coached at Delta State, coached Pete Golding. Pete Golding was a GA under him. And then, of course, coached for him at Southeastern,
Southeastern,
yeah. And just those two know each other really, really well. Let's start there. I thought Pete Golding called a great game, and it just felt like he's becoming more and more comfortable in how he calls the game each week.
Well, I don't think Pete needed any comfortability, if you will, after calling all those games at Alabama. But what he's becoming more comfortable with is his personnel.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, I think he's learning what they can do and what they can't do and putting them in the right places. And the Ole Miss defense is playing with a chip on its shoulder. And I would proffer that it's because of Pete Golding. They're playing like Pete Golding. And you and I know Pete. We both covered Pete when he was an undersized safety at Delta State. And, man, let me tell you, he got after it. And his defenses get after it. I mean, that's why he's a coordinator in the SEC. You brought up Ron Roberts. And, Ron's a friend of mine, and he may be your friend too. But I thought he called a heck of a game as well. Just looking at things from the other side of the fence, I think he had two brilliant defensive coordinators matched up in this game tonight. Both have their defenses playing, I think, above their heads. Even with Auburn giving up 28 to Ole Miss, but they only gave up 28 to Ole Miss. And, in case some of you don't know, this is the same Ron Roberts that was Dave Aranda's defensive coordinator at Baylor a few years ago when they beat Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. So, Ron knows Ole Miss well. And, God, hats off to both those guys. I thought it was a very good defensive game for both teams.
And listen to this, David. I'm looking through the phone. So I pointed out that Katie George said that Jordan Watkins actually had surgery and had a plate inserted in his hand. Jordan Watkins quote tweets me and says 2 plates with an emoji of an whatever the face smiling at you or whatever. So
and
2
I hope
plates,
he did that
unbelievable.
I hope he did that after the game ended.
It happened right at about 10 minutes ago. So
yeah, okay, good for Jordan Watkins, man. That is good.
That's funny. But yeah, no, real quick about the defense. Here's and we'll get into game balls, but Baptiste, big game tonight. Best game as a Rebel. 7 tackles led the team. But I thought it was interesting. Did you see who started tonight at linebacker?
Suntory Perkins.
He did. 3rd on the team in tackles, tied for 2nd actually, and with 5 tackles. So big night for Perkins. We saw him all over the quarterbacks all night.
And Ole Miss fans know this, but Perkins is going to be a superstar. He is going to be a household name. 247 Sports named into their true freshman All-American team midseason earlier this week. And, man, the kid deserves it. Absolutely deserves it. And, he's the kind of guy that you want on your defense really with go get the ball kind of assignments. And not that he's not smart enough to grasp anything, but, man, you don't want to hem up his athletic ability by saying, okay, you've got this gap or this gap. I mean, he's an awesome player, Brad. His future here, blindingly bright.
Ole Miss special teams, not his best night. Fraser Macine did get off a couple of pretty good punts, but he also had an 8-yard punt. And also Charlie Pollock bobbles a snap on a chip shot field goal. So definitely some areas that Ole Miss could clean up in the special teams.
Yeah, Charlie Pollock shows up in the Ole Miss passing column in the box score as 0 for 1. He didn't take a snap at quarterback. He took it as holder. And that was a mess. And, everybody has good days and bad days. But special teams at Ole Miss, they've seen better days.
David, overall thoughts on this one before we get to game balls after the timeout? Again, this is a game, like I said in the beginning, you go to Auburn, you find a way to win, just like last week against Arkansas, avoid a landmine, and get ready for the next week. Is that kind of what you're thinking after the game today?
Man, I got to be honest with you. I'm a big picture guy, okay? I keep thinking about November 11th in Georgia. I'm sorry, but I want to go into that game. What are we? 6-1, 7-1, 8-1. I want to go into that game 8-1, Brad. 8-1 at the 2-time defending national champion that's undefeated. And the college football playoff poll comes out this week, I think. And
where do you think Ole Miss lands after this week?
Man, in the top 10. But I think number 1 is going to be Ohio State, surprisingly, not Georgia. And, so I think when we go to Georgia, they're going to be playing for something. And I think Ole Miss is definitely going to be playing for something, barring an upset. I mean, because I'm telling you, Vanderbilt and A&M, Ole Miss is going to be favored in both of those games. So, you know, that's what I keep thinking about, Brad. I mean, just to be honest with you. And if you win at Georgia, and this team can, and I know all these people are like, one game at a time, you're looking ahead. You shouldn't be doing that. I'm going to do it. I've been an Ole Miss fan for more than 50 years. And I don't know how many more seasons I got to enjoy. I'm going to look ahead. Doesn't mean Lane should look ahead or any of the players, but that game in Athens is going to be humongous. Huge. Could be the SEC game of the year.
I'll go ahead and say this right now, David. Next week against Vanderbilt, if tickets aren't sold out by Wednesday, I mean, I think they should be, because these are special times in Ole Miss football history. Ole Miss they're doing things that they've never done before under Lane Kiffin, and you should watch this team. If you don't have tickets, you don't have season tickets or whatever, you better go and enjoy this in person. I'm not saying it's not going to happen again. I get all that, but take advantage of it. And if you don't do anything, just show up and watch and celebrate with this team, because they deserve it. They're putting everything they've got on the line. They went on the road, they didn't beat a great Auburn team, David, but you nailed it. When you can go on the road to Jordan-Hare, I don't care how bad the team is, that crowd was insane tonight. And credit to Auburn's fans, man. They showed up, even at 3-3, and they've been struggling. But they showed up. But Ole Miss showed up when it mattered. And how about showing up for this team on Saturday at 6:30? I'll tell you what, they deserve it if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely do. And, one quick thought. We were talking about the defense and Pete Golding and the great job he's doing. Let me tell you where else he's doing a great job. On the recruiting trail.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Ole Miss's defensive line class is out of this world, okay? It's out of this world. But I don't think Pete's done. I wrote a story this week, and it got a lot of hits, but I want to make sure everybody paid attention to it. Antonio Alfano, defensive lineman out of Colonia, New Jersey. In 2019, he was the number one high school football player in the United States of America. He signed with Alabama. You know who he signed with?
What is that?
Pete Golding. And now Pete offered him on Thursday.
How big of a game is this for recruits?
Oh, it's tremendous. It's tremendous. Recruiting's kind of simple. You win, they come. That's the bottom line. And they're coming to Ole Miss. I mean, who's got the toughest job right now? The toughest job out there is Alex Collins, because he's got to figure out which recruits get in here for the Vanderbilt game and the Texas A&M game, because there are only X amount of tickets for recruits, and they're going quickly. I promise you, very, very quickly. But, getting back to Alfano, he calls me today in the middle of his official visit at Miami. The number one player in the 2019 class calls me. And we had talked earlier this week. And he had a question, and I answered his question. And I said, hey, how's your visit going down in Miami? And he was honest. He was like, man, it's Miami. He said, you got to love it. He said, but I don't know if I want to live here.
What class is he in?
He was the number one player in the 2019 class.
That's right. Okay.
He's at Lackawanna, Pennsylvania Community College right now. And why? Because when he got to Alabama, he had epilepsy. So he transfers out of Bama, ends up at Colorado, The epilepsy continues. He pushed the reset button and decided to go to Independence, Kansas Community College. He was there for a little while, and due to his health problems, he lost a lot of weight. And things didn't go well for him in Independence. So now he's at Lackawanna Community College in Pennsylvania, and Ole Miss wants him. They've offered him. He's put the weight back on. His body's good. He hasn't had an epileptic event in 2 years' time. And why is he interested in Ole Miss? Because of Pete Golding. And Pete's already won him once. Don't bet against Pete for winning him again. And at that point, I think Ole Miss has got the best defensive line class in the country. I feel that way. And I know everybody's up in arms about William Eccles, and who was offered by Alabama last week. And Eccles may be the most talented player in the Ole Miss class, just to cut it short and tell you the truth. But he's got a twin sister, and he's really close to her. And she's a true freshman at Ole Miss this year. He's from an Ole Miss family. His mom didn't go to Ole Miss, but his sisters did. And he's committed to Ole Miss. And I really think at the end of the day, he's going to sign with Ole Miss. So you bring in him, you bring in Alfano. You already know about Cam Franklin and Cam Beavers. And I think the sleeper of the class is Maurice Davis, the 3-star edge out of Georgia. I think he's incredible. Somebody on our board compared him to Greg Hardy. I think that's about right. He's got a Greg Hardy type frame. He's 6'5", 220 pounds right now. He's going to end up playing about 245 or 250, and he won't lose a second of that cat-like jump he has off the ball. So, just a little bit on what's going on the defensive side of the ball from a recruiting standpoint, due to Pete Golding, due to Randall Joyner.
Ole Miss keeps winning like this, David. That recruiting class is just going to get better and better and better. And we're going to keep it here because I want to get right to it. David, what are your 3 game balls going, and who are they going to tonight?
Man. Well, I've already said one of them goes to Jordan Watkins. Number one, he's out there playing hurt, okay? There's a difference in being injured and hurt. Injured means you can't go. Hurt means it hurts like hell to go. Jordan went like hell tonight. Kudos to him. He gets 1 game ball. I watched Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste closely tonight. He led the Rebels with 7 tackles and two behind the line of scrimmage. But I'm not going to give him a game ball because on one play, and I forget which one it was, I think it was Thorne, juked him out of his shoes, the Auburn quarterback. So I'd skip over him. I'm going to give one to Quinshon Judkins. He went home tonight. He's from Pike Road, Alabama, right down the road from Auburn. And he did Quinshon Judkins type things. Finished with 124 yards and a touchdown, averaged almost 6 yards per carry. And, finally, golly, I want to give 2 more game balls, okay? One goes to Pete Golding, not a player, but a coach. And Pete had a great plan tonight. He contained Auburn. Like I said, the last touchdown was kind of just mopping up kind of deal. Really held Auburn to 2 touchdowns. Only gave them 7 points that last drive in the second half, or the last scoring drive. And then finally, I'm going to give a game ball to Caden Prescorn. Caden's father passed away last week. I thought he played a well of a game tonight. 2 catches, 63 yards. One went for 35, which means the other one went for 28. He was only targeted twice, but he did so much else on the field. He gave Ole Miss an extra blocker in run formations that helped spring Jackson Dart, helped spring Quinshon Judkins, helped spring Ulysses Bentley. So, Brad, if I can get 4 game balls, you got them.
I thought it was a huge game for Caden. And I'll tell you what else was interesting. You nailed it. We talked about, him losing his dad, but to be able to come back and he wears so many hats on that Ole Miss offense. And I actually tweeted out, I think in the first or second quarter, how does it feel to have a viable tight end? And what I mean by viable, a tight end that blocks, a tight end that catches passes, and is a leader on that offense. So I completely agree with you. Ole Miss wins tonight 28-21 over Auburn. Survive and advance, David. And that's exactly what they did. Didn't play well, but you know what? If you're going to have a special season, you're going to have games where you don't play well, but you come away and win the game. Final thoughts, David, is we turn our attention towards Vanderbilt.
Yeah, again, I'm a big picture guy, okay? So that means Monday morning I'm going to go ahead and apply for my credentials in Athens. I want to make sure I'm there for that. I'm excited about this team. Okay, I mean, and look, I realize there are some of you who are scared to look past the end of your nose. We've got Vandy. We've got to focus on Vandy. No letdown. That's not my job. My job is to talk to you about the Ole Miss Rebels and to convey information to you. Anything I say, do, write, talk has no effect on the football team. None whatsoever. So Monday morning, I'm going to file for my Georgia credentials. And I'm going to go to Athens. Have fun, guys. Enjoy this. I mean, we went through, in my childhood, we went through a decade, the 1980s, 1970s, 1980s, where, going to the Independence Bowl at 6-5 was unbelievable. So much fun, right? I mean, I still remember the 1983 Independence Bowl against Air Force. We won that. No, we lost that game 9-3. And in the rain, it was a terrible night in Shreveport. But you know what? Always will be. I was 12 years old. That'll always be a special memory to me because it was so rare memory. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was Ole Miss's first bowl game since the early 1970s, when maybe Archie Manning was here. So, don't be afraid. Embrace and enjoy. That's what you do. And as a fan, if you're looking ahead, it's okay. It is really okay. As a team, it's not. As a coach, it's not. But as a fan, man, look ahead. Because this season, I believe, has the potential to be humongous. Humongous. And, I think it all boils down to that trip to Athens. Because I think I've already said, I think we beat Vandy. I think we're better than Texas A&M. And that gives you Athens at 8-1. And if you win that, you come home to Louisiana Monroe and you finish up at Mississippi State. Ole Miss is going to be favored in 4 of their remaining games. The only one I don't think they're favored in is the big one at Georgia. And that's okay. Let's go in as underdogs and see what happens. You roll it out on the field and see what happens. But I'm going to get chastised for being reckless and looking ahead when I've already put the disclaimer out. Anything I say, do, write, talk, doesn't matter. It does not matter. I'm just enjoying the 2023 football season.
He's David Johnson. I'm Brad Logan. Ole Miss and Vanderbilt coming up next week. It's another night game in Oxford. The Rebels tonight, they win. Unbelievable. 28-21 after playing so poorly.
Brad, there's one other thing I need to add.
Sure.
Okay, next weekend, I think we're going to do it from 12:30 to 2:30.
Oh, yeah.
In my friend David McCullough's tent in the Grove. The Inside the Rebels staff will be there. Brad, I hope you can come. And guys, you can come by and beat up Jared and punch Tyler, and you better leave me alone. I'm old. And chat it up with us. We're going to be there, and I was talking to David last night. He's getting a banner made that says Inside the Rebels, so it'll be on the tent. And he also sent me a video. I'll be posting that up tomorrow of directions of how to find his tent. So, we're all going to be there, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys before the Vandy game. And we'll have all the information posted this week.
Yes, and that website, by the way, rebs247.com. That's Inside the Rebels, an affiliate of 24/7 Sports. That's where David writes. Tyler, plenty of information right now. Tyler Coleman's, Jared Redding, loaded right now with recruiting and everything you need to know about post-game coverage about the game tonight. Tonight's post-game podcast brought to you by the College Corner Store, located right there in Oxford, right past Sisk Avenue. It's right there on the left. Go and get that perfect game day polo, perfect quarter zip for next Saturday night's game against Vanderbilt. David Johnson, I'm Brad Logan. Rebs win 28-21. We'll talk to you down the road as the Rebels notch another win in SEC play.
Hotty toddy, everybody.
College Corner is headed to Oxford. Stop by their new location in the Oxford Commons off Sisk Avenue. They'll have 4,000 square feet of Rebel gear ready for your trip to the Grove. On your next trip to Oxford, stop by the College Corner or our other great locations in Ridgeland and Flowood. Hats, shirts, polos, pullovers, sweats, t-shirts. College Corner has it all. And as always, you can visit us online at collegecornerstore.com. That's collegecornerstore.com. The College Corner, where your game day apparel meets.
It is a place which exerts an extraordinary pull on all who have walked its hallowed ground. Thousands come each year, and yet no one ever really leaves. Ole Miss is for life, a major university with the familiar intimacy of family. Friendships that are more than friendships, moments that are more than moments. An autumn celebration on a Saturday afternoon in the Grove. Contests waged and triumphs savored. With our largest freshman class, soaring honors college, national reputation for academics and research, our pride is overflowing. Today, more than ever, for all who have ever called this magical place home. You never leave Ole Miss.
You've been listening to the Red and Blue Crew podcast with your hosts, David Johnson and Brad Logan, the source for all Ole Miss sports news, rumors, and innuendo. From the Inside the Rebels studios, join us next time right here on the Red and Blue Crew podcast.